Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to another episode of Connect with the Quran. You're here with Najman Sari, and we're going to try and just connect with the Quran to try and learn it, love it, and live it. And today we're looking at Surah Ahzab. And so I think we'll just listen to the recording first, and then inshallah we will go into it. So, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها النبي اتق الله ولا تطع الكافرين والمنافقين إن الله كان عليما حكيما واتبع ما يوحى إليك من ربك إن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا وتوكل على الله وكفى بالله وكيلا ما جعل الله لرجل من قلبين في جوفه وما جعل أزواجكم اللائي تظاهرون منهن أمهاتكم وما جعل أدعياءكم أبناءكم ذلكم قولكم بأفواهكم والله يقول الحق وهو يهدي السبيل.
Sadaqallahul Azim. So those were the first 5 ayahs of Surah Ahzab, and Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa ahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. And this is Surah number 33. Before this, we had Surah Sajda, and all the way from Surah Furqan, Surah 25, onwards to here, up and finishing off with Surah Ahzab, is a bouquet, a group number, according to the Mufassir I look at, group number 4. So what happens here is all these surahs up to Surah Sajda have been considered Makki, and this is the Madani Surah. So the background to this surah, it sort of links it to the previous passages, which were all Makki. The understanding there here, this is around in the 5th year of Hijrah, and as this is the only Madani surah at the end of this group, so we had in the previous group 3, starting from Surah Yunus all the way to Surah Nur, Surah number 24, and Surah Nur was also a Madani surah. And they often say that Surah Nur and Surah Ahzab, because they talk a lot about the ahkam of family, social structure, there in Surah Nur, it was about who your mahrams are, which homes are comfortable for you, which homes. So it was at a very sort of intimate domestic level. Here, it's at a related more at a societal level. There was a fitna with Aisha radiallahu anha of slandering her, and how she was cleared in that surah. And so there was just some allusions to skirmishes and battle kind of situations with the munafiq primarily, and also with the surrounding areas. Here in this surah, Surah Ahzab, there are 2 sort of parallel things going on. One is Rasulullah, the desire of the hypocrites, the mushrik, the Yahud, of tarnishing his reputation, of doing him harm at that level, sort of taking away the credibility of the leader. And at the same time, it talks about there was the battle of the Confederates, or of the Ahzab, and which is the trenches. Yeah, no, which in which it was the battle of the Khandaq, it's called, but It's Ahzab being the Confederates who all ganged up to try and annihilate this fledgling Muslim community. So there's a bit of history. I would like to get into that also. I think it gives a good background to our understanding. And so, just for you to know, there have been two battles already early on in the Hijrah as soon as they came to Medina. The first one being Battle of Badr, and it was in Ramadan. The second one being Battle of Uhud, and now it's about these Confederates who tried to surround and annihilate the Muslim community, is full of sort of underhand intrigues. Okay, so there is that of the battle, and then there is about Rasulullah. So here I'm just going to go from the beginning of the surah of where it does start about that. Our Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is told not to worry about the hypocrites and the unbelievers. Allah knows, inna Allah kana aliman hakima. Again, alim and hakim go together. He knows all, and the wisdom is with him. And then the second ayah goes, but follow what comes to you, ma uhiya ilayka min rabbika, what comes to you by inspiration, inna Allah kana bima ta'maluna khabira. He is well acquainted with everything and what you're going through. I love ayah number 3, and it says, وَتَوَكَّلُ عَلَى اللَّهِ وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ وَكِيلًا. That's just a beautiful thing we all need to learn. We have it as a tasbih and other things, that وَتَوَكَّلُ اللَّهِ, and Allah is indeed وَكَفَى بِاللَّهِ وَكِيلًا, as a disposer of our affairs. 4 and 5 are very interesting. It talks about that Allah does not put two hearts in the heart of a person, and this has to do with this idea of this custom, evil custom, in which a husband selfishly deprived his wife of her conjugal rights and yet kept him dangling like a slave without allowing her freedom to remarry. So, so what's interesting comes up in these two ayahs, 4 and 5. He makes a statement which customarily in that society implied that you're no longer going to be in relationship with your wife, and yet you haven't divorced her. So she's just hanging in limbo, basically. But you do it out of hate of her. And what do you say? By zihar. Zihar is a word which says that you are like the back of my mom. And this comes much later in Surah Mujadila, Surah number 60, I think, in which this is what a husband has done to her, and she comes to Rasulullah. But this was the custom. So Allah here is telling us that just by you saying something doesn't make it a fact. So a couple of things are being called to account here. You can't just say, swear, and we just bleat out, say anything. Unfortunately, some of us are more prone to it than others. We just say something and then, no, I didn't mean it, or something. So here, this whole number 4 is that they're not your mothers. You can say what you like, but that doesn't work, and that's not how it works. And nor has he made your adopted sons your sons. So no matter how much you love your son, your adopted children or something, they are not your bloodline. And so they are not, they do not inherit from you. And so by your mouth you can say what you like, but Allah is telling you that's not what you do. The other thing and so in the next 5, you call those orphans or adopted sons, whoever you've taken on, you keep their name. You do not alienate them, hide, or take away their name. This is one where you know whose child it is. The parents died and you want to adopt it or something, so suddenly you want to say, I want to give him my surname, not theirs. Or so. No, you do. A couple of benefits that come out of this is that, children need to know their parentage. Yes, it's true when there's women running around with too many men, so you don't even know who the father is. That may be the case, in which case maybe you can give him a surname, but it doesn't have to be yours. Because in giving yours, you're implying or you're letting the world know he's your blood, but he's not. And you need to, even for the child, many people go through all of life not telling the adopted child that he's the adopted child. And then they get really traumatized when somebody one day tells them, but they're not really your parents. So that's all. To offset that, that's just the underlying kind of benefit maybe of it. But it's like Allah is telling you, give them their father's names. It's juster in the sides of Allah. And then if you don't know their names, then call them your brothers in faith, okay, or your maulas. But there is no blame if you made a mistake there in the past. But it's the intention of your hearts that counts. So this also is when, if you swore at your wife and you said, now like you like my mother and so I can't have relationships with you, if you do it in a by mistake, and then you apologize, fine. But if somebody comes to, no, she's still like the back of my mother, so that intentional, Allah will call you to account, but He is Ghafurur Rahim. This is at 5, just to give you why this is of interest in about the adopted son, because this will come up further in this ayah. But here we'll stop at that, in which the take home, I think, is what you need to remember is what Tawakkal Allah wa kafa billahi wakila. And then, inshallah, the surah does blend in with the story of Ahzab and the story of what's going on in the homes. So it's a bit of that. I'm going to also just randomly pick at what I found relevant for me, which stayed with me, and I'd like to share that. But we're going to go for a short break, and I'll be back shortly. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So we just stopped off at ayah number 5 and 6, where you can say something out of hate, your mom's like that, or you can say something out of love, that the orphan child is your son. So both those two extremes, out of love, out of hate, calling your wife like your mother, and you're calling her so that you don't have to have any obligations with her. That's not on, and nor is it on that out of love you call somebody your child. We'll stop there for the moment, but I'm just going to give you an overview now also of the surah, that this whole series, which, as I said in group, was to highlight, validate the prophet of the prophet, validates prophethood and of the Quran, of their validity. And what comes up in this one is that he is directed to fulfill the messages given to him, and without caring, as it really started right at the beginning, don't worry about what the Ya Ayyuhan Nabiyyu Attaqullah, and don't follow or worry about what the unbelievers or the hypocrites are saying. So that's one of the first things that he's reminded, that you have to do what you have to do. You have to tell people you can't call orphan children that you've adopted as your sons. They're distinct. The distinctive status that he occupies among the prophets is that their role is special. The nature of his role with the Muslim Ummah and his rights and the implications to them are also explained. How they need to toe the line, how they need to be. Because this is a fledgling Medina society, and that's what it is. The status of his wives among the Muslims are special, and they're Umm al-Mu'mineen, and his special relationship with them is also elucidated. Then the reference of the great responsibility entrusted to man by Allah in His book, and it's a reminder, is sounded of the rights and obligations that this entails. So this is where the people of hypocrites, they had a malicious propaganda against the prophet, and on the reformatory measures that were taking place, they even tried to poison the minds of the wife. So all this is alluded to. There's so much in the surah. I thought I'll manage a one, but I think I'm still just working with the intro, and then inshallah we will get it. So and the story comes up also of let me first just go through 1, 2, 3 is emphasizing that whatever Allah has revealed to him, it needs to be communicated without worrying about the others. 4 to 6 is the measure stated that these are the customs of zihar and how it was, and of adopting a child, but both have no relationships to sense or reason. So this is what comes up. However, on this they raised a clamor. How can you change what the customs that we have made, but these are all self-fabricated, and Allah is cleansing that. This is now Medina and what's happening for the social life in Medina. So after that, and they still want to cling. So here also the status, his wives are the mothers of the believers, and the nearness of other blood relatives is, however, for the most of us. 7 and 8 then talks about that each prophet is a firm promise and that he's only inviting them, and if they don't believe and they don't do, then they can take a hike, kind of. So it distinguishes clearly between pure and impure. 9 to 27 is about the Battle of the Ditch. So that's where I'd like to go maybe on the next time in the history of it. And how that really shook our foundation of believers. And so in spite of the fact that the disbelievers attacked Medina with their allies and the hypocrites and all out, Alhamdulillah, Allah helped the Muslims and they remained steadfast. And so that is the take-home message, that it was a bad time. I mean, it was going to be like a genocide with everybody all around. From 28 to 35, after urging the Muslims to obey Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the wives are addressed, the Umm al-Mu'mineen, what their responsibility and their status entails. So they have a high position, so they have to have a higher standard, and if they are found guilty, then it's severe on them. But of course, that didn't happen. Then it's only befitting for them, so that's why, to safeguard their honor, they need to be at home with full grace. And protect themselves from the hypocrites who take advantage of their benevolence to lure them into becoming one thing or the other. So that there's a whole passage on that. 36 to 40, there's a brief commentary made about the marriage of Zayd bin Haritha to Zainab bin Jahsh. And so there was a difference in status, maybe. He was the adopted son of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We'll get to it when we are there. But the greatest right is as believers. So this incident is referred to, and then how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam married Zainab radiallahu anha, and she was divorced from his adopted son. So it was breaking that trend that he had committed an oppression by marrying, that he had married her after his adopted son had been. So that's why what came in the beginning made sense, that he's your adopted son, he's not your real son. And this was a way of undoing that custom. And then the fact that they tried to talk bad about Zainab radiallahu anha, and so all that was to heal. The way to heal her wounds was that Zainab radiallahu anha, Rasulullah then married her. And so there's that. I don't want to go into too much of that. That's all in the history. But the fact, for me, what was interesting, that Zayd ibn Haritha is what his father's name was before he was known as Zayd ibn Muhammad. So that story is taken care of in that one. And then from 41 to 48, they're told that they need to engage in remembering Allah as much as possible. And the Rasulullah is the greatest mercy of Allah on us, to keep us, to bring us into the radiance of faith. And if they have due regard of it, they will succeed both here and after. And the thing is that we do fall into despondency, and then we don't fulfill our rights as we should in following the Sunnah. But so that's what's from there. Then from 49 to 52, it's that the restrictions of 4 is not meant for him, while it's for all of us, for all the other men. But because he had already married so many before, but he is allowed, given this specific latitude. So the hypocrites also wanted to make, disinformation about the wives, and they shouldn't, just a lot of grievance to the Prophet. 43 to 62, the Prophet people are told now to stop entering Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as if it's nothing, it's on the wayfare and everything, and they do need to be careful. Thereafter, it's the women and the wives and the women, the wives of the Prophet Mu'minun and the women generally are directed to cover themselves when they go out of their house, and just as to not be harassed. And again, the hypocrites are sounded a final warning that they don't desist from the evil ways and pranks. There will be soon final directives after which they'll have no more refuge. So they were continuously, hypocrites were targeting Muslim women, even in the market. There are many stories, but that's elsewhere. So here they've really been taken to task about that. From 63 to 73, and in this concluding passage, again, we're reminded of Judgment Day, of don't think if it's so far, it's looming ahead of you, and no, on that day nobody will be able to benefit anybody else. So what also that does is it's a reminder that, really our qiyamah, our time starts the moment we are dead. As soon as we're underground, already from there, you either have a breeze from the heaven coming to you, or you have the punishment of the whatever else you have of insects and everything biting into you. So that kind of is just an overview given. I'm taking it from a Mufassir, and you're welcome to email or ask me where I got this information from. But that's one sort of background. And I do want to get into the history, but as it is, it seems like, this is how long it's just taken to give you an overview. The two main things that I want to talk about is the what the Confederates, how they conspired, what happened. So a bit of that background, and I'll start just now, while I have time, is that there were three tribes when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did his migration, and he came, and there was a contract taken with the people of Medina. You're going to support this town. We're going to keep it secure. So there were three Jewish tribes: Banu Nadir, Banu Qaynuqa, and Banu Qurayza. And the contract is that if you are treacherous to the system, then you get expelled. So the Banu Nadir was expelled, and even the Banu Qaynuqa. This Banu Qurayza left. They have fortresses, they're there, but they are that no, we are on the side of the Muslims. If Muslims have to suffer and fight against the Quraysh, we have to get on the side of the Muslims because we are living in this town. The Quraysh will come and go, but we are left here. So that was the status. But when all of these, after the Battle of Uhud and everything, now it was one of the Jewish tribes, the Banu Nadir, with the hate and animosity, who egged the Quraysh on. He said, look, nobody's going to listen to us so much. You guys have clout, Quraysh. You are still the custodians of the Kaaba and of Makkah. You invite all the other tribes. Let's all gang up and for once and for all get rid of these Muslims. And that's all. So you go to all the various other tribes of Makkah and say, listen, these are real pain in the neck, these Muslims, they're a thorn in our side, let's really get rid of them. And let's just besiege Medina, get onto them, fight them in their homeland. And there were just many more than there were at the in Badr. It was just 300 Muslims against 1,000 disbelievers. Then in Uhud there was more of the disbelievers against more of the Muslims. And here the whole town, they want to do it. So that is the background of how this Ahzab battle, they were preparing for it. So the Muslims had to ensure, and this is where the weak spot was, that the Banu Qurayza were not going to turn tails on them and be treacherous, traitor, and allow the Quraysh from their side of the city to come in. So there are two sides. You have some mountains, so two sides are safe, but two sides are not. And one of the non-safe sides is where where maybe the Jews can open the door and let them in. So for the most part, the Banu Qurayza know we live in this town. The others can come and go, but if, God forbid, the Quraysh and all the Confederates don't win, we're going to be stuck here with them. So this is going to play out a bit later. But inshallah, if you can go and read the history as much as you can, it's fascinating of how it all evolved. But for now, that's as far as I'll be able to get on Surah Ahzab, and so we'll just end it here. And pray that whatever I've managed to say and share of giving a breakdown of the surah will be of some benefit, and you can see how the trail moves of what Allah feels significant to talk to us about in this surah. And again, like I said, on two things: on what's happening at wanting to tarnish the leader, as well as onslaught from outside. So with that, I'll just pray that it's been beneficial to you, and pray it works for our benefit in the akhirah. So subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun al mursaleen walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. La 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 la.